New Orleans Saints 44, Dallas Cowboys 19. Is New Orleans legit Super Bowl contenders? We all know who it is. Matt Moscona. We are reacting to his reaction of the game. Now, Matt, Matthias was, what do we say, ladies and gentlemen? Do we say a non-believer? A doubting Thomas, if you will? However you want to phrase it. Matt didn't see the vision. Matt, what we call in the industry on the wrong side of history. And so I like to come on here and see exactly how he's coping with this. Now, I'm sure he's totally fine with being wrong, but it is fun to watch in real time, and so we shall watch it in real time together.
What a play it was. What a day it was for the New Orleans Saints. My goodness, y'all. I have a lot of notes here.
I have 0 notes for the show. Y'all know that. I have no notes for the show. Right now, let's see what's around me right now. For every show. No, I have the dog. I got the dog right here. You want to know why I have this dog? Because when you're trying to become, when you are the #1 most watched channel in New Orleans sports media, and you're doing what no one else can even attempt to do, you got to have that dog in you. And we got that dog in us. I got that. I got a napkin. I got some fake flowers. I got a half-drank lukewarm cup of coffee. That's what I got. And an Xbox controller right here for the Madden franchise. No notes.
That I want to get into for the game. But I thought I was going to do this at some point today, but I just feel motivated to do it right now.
Go ahead.
And I'm going to level with you very much.
Level with me.
I have my notes. I'm going to talk about the game and the team and all that stuff here in a second. Saints beat the Cowboys 44-19.
We're all friends here.
I was watching the Saints on Sunday, and I'm talking about this is – I want to talk to you as Matt, the guy that was born at Lakeside Hospital, lived in New Orleans East and Lake Carmel. Sundays were church, Shoney's Breakfast Buffet, Dome. One of my favorite gifts ever was my Dalton Hilliard 21 jersey, my little Dalton Hilliard starting lineup action figure. I mean, Dome Patrol poster on the bedroom wall. Like, you know him, like that Matt, okay? Not the guy who sits here from 3 to 6 every day and tries to give you objective takes, entertain, inform, whatever. Sometimes you agree, sometimes you don't. But
let me introduce myself. This is James Skrmetta from Biloxi, Mississippi, and I woke up every single Sunday watching the NFL. It doesn't matter who was on the TV. I watched any and every game. My dad didn't have a favorite team. I didn't have any jerseys. You know what we rooted for? Whatever the hell he was betting on. We rooted for those tickets. We rooted for those teams. One week I'd be a Lions fan. The next week I'd be a Vikings fan. The next week I'd be a Saints fan. The next week I'd be a Colts fan. That's it. Through that, I learned how to watch the games. Then I continued watching every single game, every single Sunday. Every Saturday watching college games, breaking down the games, listening to the best of the best analyze the game, listening to the coaches, looking at the X's and O's, looking at the analytics. Got older, same thing happened. Moved from Biloxi to New Orleans, got here. Said, you know what? I think I can do it better than anybody else in this business is doing it. Never changed a single thing. What you see in front of you is the same guy who watches the game on Sundays. This ain't a character, this ain't an act. I'll tell you that right now. And the reason that we are seeing things clear is because we see things different. We come at this analytically. We come at this like a bottom line of sports better. We come at this from a different angle. All right, people are talking about passing yards per game. We're digging into the next level stats. We're looking at the next gen stats, and that's what we deliver every single day right here. I don't have a Deuce McAllister action figure. I don't have a Jeremy Shockey or a Kyle Turley jersey, and I don't need them because we're #1 without them.
The guy tries to look at things objectively, put fandom aside. I want to talk to you like as Matt the fan. Yo, the last 2 weeks, I came to this realization on Sunday. The last 2 weeks are the first time I've actually had fun watching the New Orleans Saints since the Nola no call. I was in the Dome that day with my buddy Josh Ennis. We were watching the Nola no call, and I'm not just saying that because of how the Nola no call game ended.
Come on.
It's not that. That whole season was a vibe. Remember, they were awesome. 13-3. They got the one seed. That's when Choppa style, sort of the rebirth of the Choppa style, the bike life, Teddy Bridgewater, the Superdome, the locker room dance parties afterwards. That whole season was was just so much fun to watch as it all transpired. You know, they had the back-to-back-to-back 7-9 seasons. You wondered if it was done with Drew. 2017, they hit on the draft class. Boom. They're in the playoffs. The Minneapolis Miracle happens. As disappointing as it was, you felt like they were early. And then in 2018, it came to this crescendo, and they were so good again. And it felt like they were going to go win the Super Bowl. And they didn't. And after that, as a fan, all right, I'm talking to you just as a fan, all right? As a fan, 2019 and 2020 for me, as a fan, were miserable. There was so much angst and anxiety because we all knew that was it for Drew. Like the win.
I mean, those teams are sweet. I mean, like, Breeze's last couple of seasons were like 13 wins, 12 wins. I mean, we were hosting the playoff game against the Buccaneers. Like, we won the division.
No, it was closed. We all thought 2019 was going to be the last season. And, of course, it ended in the postseason against Minnesota, Kyle Rudolph, the push-off. We all saw it. And then, remember, COVID and everything, and then Breeze made the Instagram post that he was going to run it back for one more year, and then 20 went the way it did. And, you know, you had a home playoff game, you beat the Bears, then you played the Bucs, who you'd beaten twice that year, and then you lose. I'll never forget Jared Cook for that, ever. For the fumble. And then the last 3 seasons, when you've missed the playoffs back-to-back-to-back years, you were just mid, and it just wasn't a lot of fun. I mean, it was win one, lose one, good and bad, step forward, step back. It just you weren't a contender, and you knew you weren't a contender. But the last 2 weeks.
All right, let me. I understand what he's saying, and we were having a bit of fun to start the show. I understand what he's saying. What I don't understand is that, or what I do understand. I talked about this, and I referenced this before. This idea of like trauma bonding, this idea of like being enamored with the misery, and being very tunnel visioned with misery, and being very very tunnel visioned with like negativity, and that's it. The part that I don't get, and I think it's because I'm coming at this as a fan, but as a fan, I look at it through a bit of a different lens. Like, I don't have a fan lens versus another lens. I'm seeing everything the same way. When we went from 7 wins to 9 wins with Carr, and we tied for the division, that's the part where there was like a split in the road, where you had some fans were like, I had people in my comments telling me this was the worst season of their life as a Saints fan. Last year, we were 9-8. We tied for the division. Like, we were in a lot of games. We were in the game against Houston. We were in the game against Green Bay. Obviously, we blew that game. We were in the game against Detroit, even though it was 21-0 in the first 10 seconds. We were in the game against Jacksonville. 9-8, tied for the division, winning season. And people were saying it was their least favorite season ever. So then Loomis does what he should have done. Fires Carmichael. Gets a whole new offensive staff. Goes and gets Chase Young, 24-year-old, former second overall pick. Not a lot of money to spend. Goes and gets him. Goes and gets Willie Gay. A-plus draft class. Talise Fuaga, Kool-Aid McKinstry. Maintains the core players that delivered some of the great moments that Matt's talking about. Delivered some of those moments. Some of those same players that were Choppa styling down the sidelines. Some of those same players that were in those locker room dance videos. That is where the fan base and anyone watching this team should have said, okay, I see the vision. I see what's happening. I see this. I had a problem with the offensive play calling. We're fixing that. I had a problem with the offensive line. We drafted Talise Fuaga. I had a problem with the pass rush. We went and got Chase Young. Exciting player, high ceiling. Klint Kubiak, great system, exciting system, innovative system. Everything is fixed. But that tunnel vision of the misery, the tunnel vision of the negativity, a lot of fans going into this season were saying what? 4 wins, 5 wins, 6 wins, 7 wins. I mean, a lot of people who cover the team closely were going on their channel saying, I'm taking the Saints under 7.5 wins, even though we were looking at that schedule. A lot of people who cover this team said Derek Carr was the worst quarterback in the division, even though Bryce Young exists. They couldn't see through that infatuation with misery. Because in their head, it was Dennis Allen equals bad man. But that is not the case. If you took a step back last year and looked at the analytics, which are widely available, you would see that Dennis Allen is the number 1 ranked defensive play caller. And yet, the people who watch this team the closest were saying it's Allen's fault. Get rid of him. He's the worst coach in the NFL. That narrative was allowed to go, right? The same people who cover this channel were saying it's time to turn to Jake Haener. Let's bench Derek Carr. We can't win with him. My comment section was flooded with this team will never ever. This team is incapable of having a winning season. Literally after they had a winning season. And that's because of that tunnel vision of misery and the tunnel vision of negativity. Looking back now, how in the world was anyone comparing the offensive product last year to the incoming product this year, before the season even started, when we have a whole new system? Everything is different. We're going from basically zero play action to leading the league in play action. We're going from 0 pre-snap motion to leading the league. We knew what was going to happen. Kubiak, we had all the evidence of what this offense was going to look like. We had the roster. We had seen what this roster was capable of. But sometimes, I don't know what even to call it, but sometimes it can blind you from what's going on. And it was not that long ago. Not that long ago. Literally less than a month ago. Fire Loomis. Fire Allen. Cut Carr. Trade Kamara. Trade Lattimore. Benson sell the team. Start Haener. 6 wins. Max. Bryce Young taking a step forward. Panthers playoff team. Falcons 13 wins. Less than 30 days ago.
Watching this team has been so much fun. And I don't know what... Listen, it's 2 games. It's 2 games. I mean, that's been a hell of a 2 games. And we're going to talk about that. But this is just the most fun that I've had watching this team. Maybe it's the first time I've had fun watching this team since 2018. Through 2 games, y'all, the Saints have scored 91 points. 47-44. I'm not good at math, but they tell me that's 91. You've probably seen this statistic, but the only team, since the NFL-AFL merger, the only team to score more points through the first 2 games of a season,
we all know this, 2009 Saints,
were the 2009 New Orleans Saints. I'm not sitting here telling you these Saints are going to win the Super Bowl. What I am telling you is, it's super rare for any NFL team to do what this team has done.
I'll say this. I'm not telling you this team will win the Super Bowl, but I'm telling you that this team can win the Super Bowl. And that is nuts for me to even say. But I have no choice. The way that I operate this channel, the way I operate just how I analyze games, I have no choice but to look at the numbers, look at the markets, look at what is happening in front of me, look at the all 22. I have no choice but to respect that and say that, yeah, this team, the ceiling that this team has reached, I think it is sustainable. I don't think like 44 points is sustainable, but what they are doing on offense, the vision, the system, all that is sustainable. And if that's sustainable, that ceiling that you can achieve any given Sunday can beat any other team. And if you can beat any other team, you are absolutely a Super Bowl team.
And you could have, and some tried after the season opener, to say, it's Carolina, let's see how you fare against a good opponent. Well, if that was your objection, you don't have a leg to stand on. Because the Dallas Cowboys are a really good defense. I'll remind you that
Dallas has a top 3 front for sure. Like Dallas Cowboys have a top 3 front. Micah Parsons is one of the three or four best edge players in the NFL. He's right up there with the Myles Garrett, T.J. Watt, Max Crosby's. Yeah, yeah. That's another crazy part of this whole paradox is that now the Cowboys on paper match up pretty well with the Saints, like what they do defensively. I think the Eagles are a worse matchup for us personally, but I can definitely see where people are coming from with like, okay, the defensive line is their strong point, our offensive line is our weak point. The whole narrative of Derek Carr is bad under pressure. Like, I could see it. Yeah, I could see that narrative taking off. And you talk about answered emphatically.
The Dallas Cowboys a year ago were 5th in the NFL in total defense and 5th in the NFL in scoring defense. And over the course of those 4 quarters, Sunday in Dallas, the Cowboys did not make a stop. Let me say that again slowly. Over the course of that game, the Dallas Cowboys did not stop the New Orleans Saints first-team offense one time.
When the Saints took the foot off the gas, the Saints were averaging 10 yards per play. The Saints were averaging a first down a play against the Dallas Cowboys on the road.
Never zero. Through 2 games, the New Orleans Saints first offense with Derek Carr under center have had 15 possessions, and they have gotten points on all 15 possessions. We have a piece up at louisianasports.net right now if you'd like to go read it. Our buddy Ross Jackson, who does an awesome job leading our Saints coverage. He's got a piece up right now. I would highly recommend you go check it out. It's sort of an inside the numbers piece for the New Orleans Saints and what they've been able to do so far through this blazing start. And it's just a mouthful from the 91 points like we just discussed.
The numbers are ridiculous. Like the statistics that are coming out are bananas. I mean, like I just saw before I hopped on here, like Talise Fuaga, I believe was number 2 graded offensive lineman in week 1 with a 0% pass rush allowed. Like 0%. Like these numbers are nuts. You look at Carr. Carr is the number 1 ranked quarterback right now. PFF, EPA, all that stuff. Bananas numbers. I mean, last week, what was he? 16. He was plus 16% on expected completion rate, or a completion rate over expectation. Like, no one does that. He had like 85% completion percentage, and his expected was like 68. It was nuts. Like those numbers, like when you hear about the stories of like Hurricane Katrina, where it's like, well, our storm surge or our flood meters break at blank feet, and Katrina broke them, so we actually have no idea how high the storm surge was. When you hear that kind of stuff, and you're like, that sounds like something out of Final Destination. That's like the weather version of the stats that I'm hearing with the Saints. Where you hear them and you're like, okay, that's like rookie version of Madden. You know, like, what am I supposed to do with that? But it's real life. And it's not just against the Panthers. It's against pretty much consensus top 5 defense on the road.
I mean, there's so much more. 39. Derek Carr threw 33 passes in his debut a year ago. First game a year ago, he threw 33. He's thrown 39 through 2 games. He's completed 30 of his 39 passes. He leads the NFL with a 76.5 completion percentage and 142.4 passer rating. It's incredible. We focus so much on the offense. How about the defense? They've got 5 takeaways, 4 interceptions. That's second in the NFL only to Green Bay. I mean, I could run through it.
Remember, turnovers are random. Don't focus too much on that.
But you can go read it at louisianasports.net. It's an incredible list of superlatives. Go read it. I'll tell you, there's 2 things in particular. 2 things, in a week ago after they beat Carolina 47, the hell was that final? 47-10? Was that it? 47-10. You lose count. Dennis Allen said after the game, look, when you win a game like that, you still have to be self-critical and go look at the film and say, okay, where were the things we could have done better? And I'll tell you, in this game, there's a few things. It's easy to ignore. Remember, winning masks deficiencies and magnifies, and losing magnifies them. You missed a PAT. That's inexcusable. And Blake Grupe was awesome last week. Made all 4 field goal attempts, including 2 from 50+. He missed a PAT. You cannot miss a PAT in the NFL.
I don't care about that at all. I would chalk that up to a fluke. You miss a couple in a row, whatever. But if PATs are 96%, you're going to miss one every, 100. Grupe misses that one. The Bengals kicker, McPherson, he missed an extra point against the Chiefs. He was like, I don't think he missed an extra point the entire season last year. Happens. Fluke. I unless you see like something wrong with his mechanics, I just chalk it up.
CeeDee Lamb, 65-yarder.
Broken play. I would also chalk that up to a fluke. Chunk plays, you got to kind of dig into chunk plays. Like, you got to look at the context of those. That one, I would say, yeah, it's a couple missed tackles, a couple broken tackles, kind of similar to the Minnesota Miracle. It can't happen, but those plays do happen.
I mean, Tyrann Mathieu was coming over from his safety spot. He just overran the play, allowed. Now, Tyrann made up for it with incredible. Tyrann was incredible. But that was one of those plays where you can't let anybody, let alone CeeDee Lamb, get upfield for a 65-yard touchdown. Derek Carr threw an interception. I mean, Chris Olave was open over the middle. You got to hit that pass. He threw it wide. Olave tipped it right into the hand of a defender. Now, you came right back with it. You got the turnover right back because that's how opportunistic and awesome this team has been and how this start to the season has gone. But those are the types of things I'm sure Dennis Allen, when he talks to his team, are going to focus on.
But that's also that's a good indicator of where the standard for this team has been risen to in just 2 weeks. What Matt is doing here is basically like, here's the whatever 4 or 5 examples where this team was not quite literally perfect. I mean, you're talking about what one of Carr's 3 or 4 incompletions ended up going for a pick. It's like, hey, Derek, don't throw an incompletion. Grupe misses an extra point. Hey, Grupe, don't miss that extra point. Tyrann Mathieu has a random, the one play that Dallas really kind of does anything on. It's like, hey, don't let that one thing happen. If you correct all of those things, it'd be like watching a pitcher. It's like watching Paul Skeens throwing, and he's in the 8th inning. He's chasing a no-hitter, and he gives up a 2-run home run. And then after the game, you're like, well, we can clean some things up. Like, Paul shouldn't have given up that home run. It's like, yeah, obviously. But he was throwing 8 innings of no-hit ball at that time. Like, he was throwing, James, how could it be a 2-run home run if he's throwing a no-hit ball? Obviously a walk, ladies and gentlemen. Catch up. Keep up. But, those little bitty things right there, that is the difference in a team being a perfect team and a team being a 44-19 winning kind of team. But that's the level that we're at now. That's the level of the standard that the Saints have risen to, where anything less than perfection is like, okay, we got to work on these things.
But y'all, ultimately what this comes down to, and I know a lot of people have asked, Matt, you've been so critical of Derek Carr. Yes, I have. I think, as I've said a million times, I think Derek Carr's a great man, great husband, great father, all those things. But as an NFL quarterback, we have a 10-year sample size to suggest what he is. This is his 11th year in the NFL, and he's a mid-tier quarterback. That's what he has been for a decade in the National Football League.
Well, now you kind of have a problem. Like, now you kind of have a problem where when you label the player and you ignore the context of the scheme, the players around him, the roster around him, the coaches around him, all that stuff, and you just label Carr as the issue, right? Carr as the C- quarterback, Carr as the whatever, however he's going to phrase it. Then you have to ask yourself, like, okay, well, then how is he doing what he's doing now? Because what he's doing now is the highest level of quarterback play in the league. And then you look at last year and you see the 25 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and you see all of that while being hurt, while being in a bad system, while having an offensive line that's just getting him absolutely crucified every single play. And, it's not really adding up. Those three things can't all be true at the same time. What seems to be the truth is that Derek has been in some really bad systems, has had some awful situations around him, including last year. Like, everyone points to Josh McDaniels and everyone points at all that, but last year is as bad as it gets for a quarterback to come into that situation, to deal with Pete Carmichael, to deal with that offensive line. So you do kind of have to reframe the 11 years. And I'm not saying this makes Carr an MVP. I'm not saying any of that, but I'm saying it can make him play at the level of a Brock Purdy last year. Just so happens that at one point, Brock Purdy was the favorite to win the MVP. So in this system, in this scheme, in this whatever, there's not that much difference between Carr and whoever you're thinking is like the 6th, 7th, 8th best quarterback in the NFL. And if Derek Carr is the 6th, 7th, 8th best quarterback in the NFL, he's not a C quarterback. I'll tell you that. He's looking a whole lot like Brock Purdy with a better arm right now. That's what he looks like to me. Is Brock Purdy with a better arm. A more talented Brock Purdy.
And I don't think 2 games changes that. What I will say, undeniably, is that Klint Kubiak has very clearly found an unlock that matches Derek Carr and Alvin Kamara's skill set. We talked a lot in this offseason about if Kamara should have gotten a contract extension. And the answer was unequivocally no. Because we have seen a declining player for the last 3 years. That's objective. That's not my opinion.
Now, see, that's exact same situation where you take Kamara and you look at the numbers and you say, okay, he's declining. But then you have to look at the context and say, is he actually declining? Are you looking at his velocity? Are you looking at his quickness? Are you looking at his actual metrics of his physical metrics? Or are you looking at the statistics and then contributing those to Alvin, when those probably should be contributed to the offense? It could be contributed to the certain types of plays he's running. Okay, he averages 3.9 yards a carry last year. What's he averaging? How many of those carries are in between the tackles? How many of those carries are a pitch or a toss or in zone? Like, you have to really start breaking that down. It's easy to just contribute all of it to the player. But Alvin is a great case because Derek had one season where he was getting MVP votes and he had a ceiling. Alvin had a pretty extended period of time there where he was a consensus top 5, top 6 running back in the NFL. So Alvin has this, but over the last couple of years, I think there's been a bit of a false narrative that he is physically breaking down when there should have been way more of that contributed to the system that he was playing in.
Alvin Kamara has declined in production the last 3 years, and he hasn't stayed healthy. You don't give a contract extension to that player. But in this offense, with the wide zone schemes, getting Kamara to the perimeter has been amazing. Look, Dennis Allen, after the game, talked about Kamara and sort of in defense of Kamara these last 3 years. Give a listen.
I never felt like he was an aging running back. I felt like he was still an explosive player, and I think we're utilizing him in a way that allows him to, be effective. I think he's still one of those guys that if you create some space and he's able to operate in space, I think he's pretty good. But yeah, I thought he ran the ball well, and I thought caught the ball well out of the backfield.
After 2020, when Kamara averaged 5 yards a carry, the last 3 years, 3.7, 4.0, 3.9.
What do we think happened in those 3 years? Does anybody want to guess what could have possibly led to some decline of production in those years? Was it maybe that Drew Brees left and Trevor Siemian was the starting quarterback? Maybe defenses started to approach things a little differently. Was it that Sean Payton left and Pete Carmichael was now calling the offense? Seemed to be pretty pretty obvious indicators of why his production may have slipped the last 3 years.
This year, 5.7. He was a declining player the last 3 years.
We're getting close, but we're still saying the wrong thing. They cannot be true. They both cannot be true. He cannot have been a declining player because then he would still decline. Unless you believe that he was a declining player physically, went to GNC with Jake Haener and got whatever the hell Jake Haener's on, and this year, now all of a sudden, he's gone the other way. So, it's kind of a cute way of saying it, but there is a difference in Alvin Kamara's production has declined, and the production from Alvin Kamara has declined. Like, those are two separate things. Yes, the numbers had declined, but offensive numbers across the board, those 3 years declined. I'll give you, like last year. Last year, Alvin Kamara's numbers were really bad. 3.9 yards a carry. We all never had more than 80 yards in a game. The offensive line was horrible. 32nd in the NFL. Couldn't do anything. The numbers are for sure declining. That is no doubt about it. But saying the numbers are declining is different than saying these players are declining, because that obviously is not true. It cannot be true. A quote-unquote aging running back doesn't decline for 3 years, and then in that fourth year, all of a sudden physically start to ascend. It doesn't happen. So that's part of the big problem, is we're contributing statistical decline to a player and his physical skill set when it should be contributed to what's around him. And if you can fix what's around him, like the scheme, system, all that stuff, then you could deduce that the statistical decline, you would see an uptick.
Objectively.
That was a Harvard level class right there, ladies and gentlemen. That was an absolute masterclass.
But now you've got him in a scheme where he's able to show off. So you're 2 games in. Let me see what he looks like through 17 weeks. But clearly this version of Alvin Kamara is incredible. Jamal Williams is getting off in this offense as well. Everybody is. You know, the thing we talked about throughout this offseason, remember we had Ross Jackson here every day during Saints training camp. And consistently, the conversations we had with Ross were about how the offensive line was struggling after losing 3 starters. You didn't have great depth at receiver after Olave and Shaheed. Would it be Cedric Wilson? Would it be Bub Means? Would it be A.T. Perry? I mean, this was the conversation we had should the Saints trade for Brandon Ayuk? Remember, these were the conversations we were having 6 weeks ago, y'all.
Right. And this offense, runs so many multi-back sets, so many multi-tight end sets, that the 3 wide receiver sets don't really happen in this offense. So having Olave and Shaheed and being able to couple them with multiple tight ends or multiple backs, that kind of shielded that deficiency. All of a sudden, like, who's the number 3 wide receiver? It's like, well, Alvin probably is. Who's the 4? Well, probably one of the tight ends. Who's the 5? It's like, well, I mean, maybe at that point it might be like Cedric Wilson or something. But all of a sudden now you're talking about your 5th wide receiver depth. How many teams in the NFL have a 5th wide receiver, right? So that's another one of those things where you're taking the old school, like the Saints are running very old school offense a couple years ago, aka last year. 3 wide receiver sets, 1 back. We all know the drill. So then that conversation is like, okay, who's going to be the 3? But in this offense, it's who's going to be the 3 really doesn't matter. Same with the running backs, where it's like, okay, who's our 3rd string running back? Is it Jordan Mims? So, well, our 3rd running back is probably Taysom Hill. Okay, well, who's our 4th? Kind of Rashid Shaheed on these like jet sweeps and stuff out of the backfield. That's the best part of this offense, is that it's not this super linear, like hitting tab on the depth chart. Alvin Kamara is simultaneously in the running back column and the wide receiver column. Taysom Hill is simultaneously in about 40 columns. And Rashid Shaheed was lined up in the backfield plenty against Dallas. So that's part of this new age offense.
And or 4 weeks ago. And the thing that Ross said on this show that resonated with me then, and I'm probably going to reference it 100 times to the end of the season, is, well, the Saints went and invested in free agency on the defensive side. Chase Young, Willie Gay. And we sat here and asked, why didn't you go invest on the offensive line or receiver? The point Ross made was maybe they feel like their investment was in Kubiak. They feel like their talent, their skill offensively is good enough. What they needed was a new play caller, was a new strategy. And through 2 weeks, it is hard to argue against that at all.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, no question at all. That's been completely confirmed. Like, the problem was scheme, play calling. Like, I mean, Matt mentioned it. We scored on 15 of 15 drives or whatever the number was. We did not score on an opening possession in a game last year until I think week 16. Forget 15 for 15. We did not score a touchdown on the opening possession, which should be your most efficient possession of a game, for 90% of the season.
Because what they are doing looks dramatically different, and the results clearly are dramatically different. The challenges are coming, but on the road at Dallas, where they've been sensational.
That's the challenge.
At home, and you beat them 44-19?
Because you wanted to. It could have been 63-12. It could have been 63-19. This 44 is 44 with an asterisk. And then an asterisk is mercy, is what that was. Derek Carr threw, I think, he had 2 completions in the second half. If this team wanted to, that 44 is a 64 really fast.
What hill can't this team climb if they're playing like that? I get it. It's 2 games. It's a small sample. The other big question is how teams adjust, because that's part of life in the NFL, really in all professional sports. It's like in baseball. You see it all the time. Pitchers come in, they have great success early. Once hitters learn their tendencies, they adjust. Well, pitchers then have to adjust how they pitch to certain hitters. It's no different. It's no different here. You've got 2 weeks of game film now that you've shown the NFL what you're trying to do. How do these defensive coordinators start to scheme New Orleans to try to limit what this offense has been through 2 weeks? And that's going to be the cat and mouse game. And when someone adjusts, then Kubiak will have to adjust in turn.
I think the adjustment happens in a couple years, league-wide. Right now we're seeing this, like, high, too high shell kind of adjustment that was made to the Chiefs when they were just bombing the ball, whatever it was now, 5 years ago. And we see now, like, it's nothing but checkdowns. Like, passing yards are down across the league. All that's down across the league. Interceptions are down across the league because it's just checkdowns. Because defense is adjusted to the Chiefs, and now it's just straight up, we're not going to let you beat us deep. I think there's going to be an adjustment to the Shanahan offense, but that includes an adjustment to San Francisco. It includes an adjustment to the Rams. It includes an adjustment to Miami. It includes an adjustment to Minnesota. It includes an adjustment to Houston. Any of these teams that are doing this, it's going to be a league-wide adjustment. And yeah, I agree. Once that adjustment happens, then there will be a new offense. A new offense will take over, and then it's up to these coordinators to stay on the cutting edge.
But you got to have a lot of confidence in his ability to do so, because these early results are pretty awesome. So Saints win 44-19. They're 2-0. And y'all, like we talked about as far as the record, listen, I picked this team to win 6 games this year. It looks like I'm going to be dramatically wrong. Part of what we looked at, though, was can you be 4-3 through 7? Be 3-3 through your first 6. Beat Denver at home on that Thursday night. If you're there at 4-7 with your head above water, there's enough opportunity in those final 10 games to finish above 500, 9-8, 10-7, and win the division and go to the playoff, host a division game, host an opening round game as a division champ. Now you can start to think, all right, you got one nobody thought you were going to get. I mean, you were a touchdown dog on the road against Dallas. Don't give it back. You got one nobody thought you were going to get. Don't give it back. Don't rest on your laurels and play down in the level of competition later in the season. See how they do, man. Because Philly plays tonight against Atlanta. So next week, you're at home against the Eagles. And the Eagles are going to be traveling on a short week, and you're back at home, and you better believe the roof is going to come off of that place.
Oh, yeah.
When this team gets back home.
Yes.
Go get another one. Don't give it back. Don't rest on your laurels. It's going to be fascinating to watch. But one thing is undeniable. I'll finish where I started. Isn't it fun watching this team again? I don't know that I could have said that now for the last 5 years.
100%. I agree with him there. It is fun to watch this team. I'm having a blast. And we're having a blast here, pumping out more coverage, more content than anybody else doing it. So thank you all very much for continuing the engagement, continuing the comments, the likes, the views. I mean, when I look at a video and I see 350, 400, 500 comments on a video, it absolutely warms this heart right here, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you very much. Get on down in the comments below. Let me know what you think. I will see you in the next video.